Last time, we finished our first full trail, Rattlesnake. It runs from the front of the property all the way to Pomifera Point, the peak of Bodark Flats. Okay, I guess it's more of just a high spot rather than a peak, but the point is this is where all our downhill trails will start, and if we want to take full advantage of our very limited elevation, we need to get up to speed almost instantly. To do that, we will be building a deck, 10 feet wide, 12 feet long, and 6 feet high. This deck will be very similar to the decks you find on most residential houses. It will be built using treated lumber and have rails to keep people from falling off. But instead of stairs, this one will have steep ramps to ride your bike off of. And unlike most decks built in neighborhoods, this one is being built by total amateurs. So let's get started. First, we need materials, so I ordered some from our local lumber yard. And because this is being built in the middle of a field, they can just drive out here and unload it right next to the job site. Speaking of the job site, the next step is to clear it, which is as simple as trimming some grass. After that, we can start carefully mapping the holes according to our plan. Then, we can dig them. And out here, that is a never-ending task. To make sure this structure is solid, I'm digging 3 feet deep holes big enough for a 6x6, and 3 feet is a lot further into the ground than I thought. Try digging a 3 foot deep hole yourself someday, and you'll see what I mean. Okay, now comes the fun part, where we figure out how to get 12 foot 6x6s into these holes.
Whoa! Oh! I guess that's how you do it.
Turns out this is really simple. Just pivot the post till the end is over the hole, raise the post up, and wait for it to fall into the hole.
Fall. Already. Okay. Whoa!
And just like that, this is starting to look like an actual structure. But before we can attach anything to these posts, we need to make sure they are straight. To do that, we are using stakes and 2x4s. First, we hammer the stakes into the ground. Then, we connect the 2x4s using temporary screws. After that, we level the posts and screw in the 2x4s to hold it in place. This post level was incredibly handy for doing this. The fact that it attached to the post meant we didn't need to juggle a level. If anyone is interested, I'll leave a link in the description below. While leveling the posts, we also need to make sure they are the right distance apart, and sometimes that means trying to force the post over a bit. But on one post, I just completely messed up and dug the hole in the wrong spot. That meant we had to lift it out of the hole, dig some more, and re-level it. And I promise you I did measure twice, but next time I'm measuring 3 times. After fixing that problem, it's time to put the outside stringers on. With 2 people, this is relatively easy. Just hold it up and tack it in place temporarily with some screws. But when you only have 1 person, it gets a bit more tricky. Holding a 12 foot 2x10 in the air while you tack it on with a screw is kinda sketchy.
Right.
And once you get it up, it will inevitably not be level, so you will spend the next 10 minutes messing around until it's finally somewhat straight. But if you have enough determination, you can do it. After putting the first one on, I decided to get clever and used a ladder to hold up the stringer. But to say the least, I didn't think this went through entirely.
So, I'm not sure if you see the problem here, but this is not going to work. I would have to disassemble the ladder. So, yeah, that's not great. It's not a great solution.
After taking care of that mind bender, I still had one more stringer to attach. And since it is the last one, it is going to show just how accurate we were when we dug our holes. Judging by the fact that it only took a little bit of nudging to get relatively lined up, I'd say we did pretty good. Now, to tie all this together, we need something more than just screws. Most decks use lag bolts, but lag bolts need washers, pre-drilling, and sometimes a nut on the other end. These timber locks don't. They actually are meant to replace lag bolts. You just drive them in with an impact driver, and bam, you're done. No pre-drilling or hardware necessary. They also make you feel like a boss. Now that we have our frame up, we can secure this in the ground. To do that, I'm using Quickcrete. Just pour in a bag, pour water on top, and leave it to set overnight. It's that simple. Setting the posts and installing the outside stringers took me 2 full days back to back. But after a day of rest, we are ready to make this an actual deck. Now that our concrete is dry, we can fill in the holes and remove the 2x4 supports. Next, we need to install some joist hangers. First, we go through and mark the position of each hanger on the end board. Now, everyone has their own way of doing this, but the most popular is to bang on this tab near the top, then put in your fasteners. I find that you need to be very precise with the hammer to make this work, since if you miss just a little bit, the whole thing comes off. I like to use a piece of scrap joist, line the wood up with the top of the board, bang really hard on one tab, then install my screws. Once the first screw is in, I can install the rest of the fasteners. Once the hangers are in place, we can install the actual joists themselves. And since 12-foot boards are in reality a little more than 12 feet, we need to trim a little bit off the ends. And now it's time to make this deck an actual deck. To do that, we are using 5/4 by 6-inch treated deck planks. And to space them, we are using 2 spacers which we got off Amazon. I'll leave a link to them in the description if anyone is interested. After all the boards are spaced, we can go back and add all the deck screws we didn't put in yet. And maybe it's just me, but I think this always looks really epic on camera. Now that people can stand up here, we need to add a rail to make riders feel safe. Don't worry, we did come back later and fix how terribly crooked the rail had become. Now we have a deck and a rail, but no way to actually get up there with bikes. If you remember, the plan was to make a ramp that is long, gradual, and wide, so basically very easy for everybody to either ride or walk their bikes up. So first we use string line to get a feel for the size of the ramp. Now, because the ramp needs to be gradual, the beams that hold up the floor are going to have to be very long, about 20 feet. So, because we don't have any boards that are 20 feet long, I'm taking two 12-footers, cutting 4 foot off the end of one, and using it as a scab to join the two boards in the middle.
Turn this like this. Math. And I've completely forgotten how to do trigonometry. So that's sad.
Then, after some failed math attempts, I figured out the correct angle, cut the end of the board, dug a hole for the other end, and then used a special joist hanger to attach it to the deck. I also put a post in the middle since the support is so long. And here's where I fail as a filmmaker. I had a GoPro running to capture the whole process of building the ramp, but I formatted the SD before saving the footage, so all I have is bits and pieces which I filmed with my phone, but I'll do the best I can. After installing 2 more joists, it's time to make this rideable, and I'm kicking myself for deleting that footage because watching me install the planks would have been really cool. Instead, all we have is just footage of us screwing the boards in, which I guess we'll have to make do with. One more thing, we came back and installed railings on all the sides. Why? Well, there may be kids using this thing, and we want them to feel safe so they can focus on riding down the ramps instead of being scared of falling off the edge. And before we ride, we need to add a slight reroute to Rattlesnake so you can maintain your speed coming off this ramp. With the help of the lawn treader and the tiller, I can knock that out pretty quickly. So now, may I present the most prominent structure on the Bodark landscape, and the new peak of our domain. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the fortress.
What the? Whoa. Okay.
I hope you guys have enjoyed this build as much as I did. And don't forget, we still have one more thing that we need to add to make this project complete. So subscribe so you don't miss that video when it comes out. Thanks for watching, now get out there and find your flow.